Welcome to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, produced by the Caribbean Leadership Program under the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICAD, where we provide a number of leadership development interventions tailored for the Caribbean context in support of public sector transformation as well as regional development. In this Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, we will be discussing a range of leadership issues within the public sector context which impact our national and regional development in the Caribbean.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership. Here's your host, Dr. Lloyd Parks.
In today's program, we are going to be looking at the topic of succession planning in the Caribbean public service context. And we have somebody who is eminently qualified to speak to us on this topic. She is none other than Mrs. Rosemund Warrington, who is currently the Assistant Director at the Caribbean Center for Development Administration. And she has responsibility for the HR and organizational development function. She is an HR and OD specialist with more than 25 years experience in the areas of human resource management and development, organizational development, public sector transformation, among others. She holds a master's in human resource management and organizational development from the University of Manchester in the United Kingdom. She has been working at CARICAD for over 15 years, and she has spearheaded the recent development of a succession planning toolkit for Caribbean public services. Mrs. Warrington, welcome.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you for having me.
We are so pleased to have you. Tell us a little bit about your own personal leadership journey and how did you get into this field of human resource development and organizational development?
Thank you. You know, Lloyd, over the course of my 30-year career, I've come to understand that leadership is not a state, it's a journey.
Oh, yes.
And so I'm happy to be talking to you today about my personal journey in the public sector and up to this time at CARICAD. In terms of my journey in the public service and how I got to where I am today, I like to consider myself a Caribbean person. I am originally from the Commonwealth of Dominica. I was brought up in a very small village in Dominica called Vecas. I joined the public service in my late teens. Much later in my work life, I was trained in IT, both in Florida and Barbados.
Yes.
Did a bit of computer programming. I was the lead trainer in Microsoft applications for the entire public service in Dominica. I also worked in various capacities in a number of ministries and departments in Dominica, including the Economic Development Unit, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Legal Affairs, Foreign Affairs and Trade, Establishment, Personnel and Training Department. But I really took my first steps towards human resource management in 1995 during my time at the Establishment Department. To continue on that journey, as I moved up the ladder, I was fortunate to have had some inspiration and mentoring along the way. And for this, I am so grateful to some of the persons who took me under their wing, so to speak. Persons like Mrs. Juliette Lewis, former Chief Personnel Officer of Dominica, Mr. Alfred Levy, and even Mr. Erwin Larocque. He was Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade during the time that I was there. He's currently the Secretary General of CARICOM. So I am very pleased to have had that sort of influence on my life and career going forward.
So you certainly had a beautiful development into this area of HR and OD.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I realized my love for HR, as I said, during my stint at the establishment. I was responsible then for performance management, performance standards. Later, I became head of the Public Service Training Center. And then having done studies at the UE in public administration, I went on to the University of Manchester to do postgrad studies in human resource management and organization development.
What is succession planning and why is that important to the countries, to our public services?
Succession planning, to put it simply, is about ensuring that our leadership pipeline is always filled with a pool of not only qualified but competent people.
Yes.
It involves having the right leadership in the right place at every level in the public service. So when we think of succession planning, we really think of talent management. How do we manage talent?
Yes.
You know, from the time an individual enters the public service until such time as they, take up senior positions in the public service. As I love to say, it is about having the right people in the right position, in the right place at the right time.
And doing the right things.
And doing the right things.
Oh,
absolutely.
yes.
Absolutely. So it is a systematic effort. It is not a standalone effort. It is a systematic effort and process for identifying high potential candidates for key managerial positions, but not only for key managerial positions, but also for mission critical positions.
Yes.
And those mission critical positions are positions that if they were left unfilled, then the organization would have a really difficult time fulfilling its mission requirements.
The public service is made up of a plethora of institutions with so many different job types.
Yes.
And many of them are unique to the public service, that these are not skills you can necessarily just recruit from the wider labor market that easily.
You're correct there.
Yeah, and so this is really about not just about making sure we have the talent, but making sure that we have continuity and sustainability of public service delivery.
A few things, though, I'd like to stress about succession planning. It is more than just promoting employees within an organization. We've seen across the region that it is more about replacement. Someone leaves and we dip down into the organization to pull up persons to replace that individual. So it's more than just promoting employees. It is more than just as well employee development. While both areas are important, and I'm really not minimizing the importance of those areas, when doing succession plan, there are a couple of things that we need to ask. We need to answer the question, what are the future needs of the organization? What talent, skills, and knowledge will our future leaders need? And what are the strengths and weaknesses of our current workforce?
Yes.
And those are critical answers that we must answer if we have to start thinking about succession planning.
In your role as Assistant Director of CARICAD, you have undertaken a major piece of research on the state of succession planning in the Caribbean region among our public services. From that research, what are some of the major challenges that Caribbean public services face in the area of succession planning?
Yes, CARICAD did conduct a regional survey on the status of succession planning in our 17 member states, and I will be happy to share some of the results with you.
Yeah.
80% of CARICAD member states do not have formal succession planning frameworks in place.
Wow.
And this is serious. 100% of respondents said that it was very urgently needed. So people recognize that we need to do succession planning. We need to implement programs. In terms of the degree of suitability of an approach to succession planning, everybody said that what was important to them was internal leadership grooming and a retention program. So leadership training is very, very critical there to our member states, to those responding to our survey. To share some further stats with you, in one of our member states, 37% of senior managers in the public service is currently eligible for retirement within the next 5 years. So you see, there is a sudden realization that trained replacements are not available and we need to do something about it.
On that note, we want to pick up and continue discussing these challenges and these research findings. We are going to continue the discussion right after this very short break. Stay tuned.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Across Caribbean public services, there is great demand for transformational leadership to create an environment that fosters innovation in public service delivery. But how do you know if your organization has this enabling environment? Grounded in research, the Caribbean Leadership Project has developed an enabling environment assessment. This provides a wide range of strategies and actions to help take public sector organizations and regional institutions to a higher level in enabling transformational leaders. To find out how you can use this assessment to foster and inspire purpose-driven leadership, to build leadership capacity for action, encourage collaboration, and support the achievement of results, visit us at www.clptoolkit.org and contact us at info@caribbeanleadership.org. Let us help your organization learn, network, succeed.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Welcome back to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where today's topic is the process of succession planning in Caribbean Public Services. We have with us Mrs. Rosemund Warrington, Assistant Director in CARICAD, and she has been sharing with us about some research findings from the recently concluded succession planning survey done in the Caribbean region. Continue to share with us some of the major challenges being faced in this area of succession planning in Caribbean Public Services.
Okay. What we're seeing now in our member states, we're seeing a wave of senior managers already retiring. And this is creating unprecedented challenges for us in the public service. People are also leaving for better salaries. The grass looks green on the other side, so people migrate. But what does this tell us? This tells us that there is an urgent need for progressive human resource strategies, strategies that will help us develop a workforce of the future.
Yes.
So when we talk about the future of work, a workforce of the future, we're also bringing in succession planning. In order to do that, we need to do succession planning and do it in an effective way. Even as we look at leadership in our public sector organizations, 5, 10, 20 years down in the future, who's really leading it? Who's going to lead it? This is a question that we really don't want to think about too much, but it is a reality that we must consider. It tells us that we must look at succession planning. Are we grooming people for the eventuality of the time when individuals will leave and demit office? Are we developing individuals in the areas that are necessary for moving forward?
And it's even important to understand that the areas are dynamic and they are changing.
And they are constantly changing.
Yes. I mean, let us say 20 years ago, I don't think the average, say, permanent secretary had to be too concerned about ICT. I mean, 20 years ago, we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have social media marketing and social media tools and whatnot have you. It's a totally different landscape.
We have to change with the times. We have to make adjustments. Just yesterday, I was sharing some stat with my boss and telling him that right now, every second, 60,000 tweets are being released. Wow. Can you imagine that?
Yes.
In this time of technology, it tells us that the public service can no longer remain where we are doing business as usual. We have to step up. We have to step up. We have to train. We have to build the competencies in the areas that are required. The World Bank doing business indices, some of us don't pay much attention to it, but we need to. If we're looking at providing service, being citizen-centric, we need to look at the kind of services that we deliver. And so we need to be paying attention to the doing business indices. Where are we as individual countries along those lines of the indices? And what can we do to improve? How can we build leadership? How can we introduce systems that will help us to deliver better?
That is a very pertinent point that you just made, because in fact, I do believe amongst CARICAD member states for the last, say, 5 years, most of those countries have actually fallen in the ease of doing business indices. We haven't necessarily improved that significantly. So that is a major challenge that we have to deal with.
But in terms of the challenges that you asked, one of the biggest challenges in our public sector, as we see it, is not only implementation, and we know implementation is a serious issue for us in the region, but also sustaining innovation and programs.
Yes.
Sustaining those programs, it's a real challenge for us. So when succession planning is implemented, it needs to be sustained.
Yes.
And by sustaining, we need to have the right people to be able to carry on and manage the program. And when I'm talking a bit about the succession planning toolkit that CARICAD has developed, I will speak a little bit more about that. But some other challenges that we have is the failure to see the big picture. We need to stop having this linear view and this short-term view. We must see the bigger picture. We must link succession planning to broader strategies or national development strategies. Everything needs to be aligned to our national development strategy.
And in fact, this is another challenge that we have in the region. There are many countries in our region, unfortunately, who actually do not have an overarching national development strategy, much less to have such a strategy for the public service in terms of clearly defining what's the vision of the public service in terms of its role in making the national vision a reality.
Yes. Our line of work at CARICAD, we always advocate for strategies at the national level. CARICAD is very involved in strategic planning itself. And so we encourage our member states to have a vision, a national vision, a vision for the public sector, a vision for public sector transformation. I've already said that succession planning is not a standalone activity.
No.
It is linked to other HR activities. So in order for succession planning to work, we must have the other HR subsystems. Our performance management systems must be working, recruitment and selection, training and development. We must have valid job descriptions. It's just compensation system, workforce planning, career development, all of these HR subsystems. And our enabling environment must be working such that it supports and it creates the foundation for succession planning.
Do you think that there are any cultural issues that impede our ability to implement sustainable succession planning strategies?
Well, lack of commitment at all levels, is something that we need to address, which means that there needs to be a shift in our thinking, a shift in the way we do things. And so culturally, we've done things the same way over and over the years. Right now, we really need to take stock and say, although we've been doing this the same way for umpteen years, we really need to start thinking about doing things differently. And so succession planning itself, the process requires us to think differently, to train differently, to build competencies differently, to include things like psychometric assessments, which traditionally we would not think of, but more and more in public services, we're seeing people are being hired and promoted based on psychometric assessments.
Yes.
But our thinking has to change. Our mindsets has to change. And so it will require a targeted communication strategy in order to bring it across to public officers. What's in it for me? What's in it for the organization? How can we benefit from this? And to buy into the whole idea of succession planning.
We are going to take just a short break. Please stay with us.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Does your organization have leaders with the self-awareness and confidence to lead effectively? Can they develop high-performing teams? Can they work effectively with multiple stakeholders? And are they equipped to navigate change and complexity? For these and other leadership challenges, the Caribbean Leadership Program offers a suite of virtual, face-to-face, and customized interventions to meet your needs. Our 5-day workshop on leading change and transition will provide senior executives with the mindset shift and tools to successfully lead change initiatives. Our transformational leadership development program is ideal for preparing high-potential leaders for succession to executive roles. And our mid-level leadership development program is perfect for those leading from the middle. For details on these and other offerings, visit our website at www.caribbeanleadership.org. Join us to learn, network, succeed.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
You are listening to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series. Today's topic, succession planning in the Caribbean Public Service context. We have with us Mrs. Rosemund Warrington, Assistant Director at CARICAD, who has responsibility for human resource management and organizational development, and who has been doing some very, very critical work in the area of succession planning research in the region, and has been responsible also for developing a succession planning toolkit for Caribbean Public Services. Share with us, how will it work and what benefits can member states derive from implementing this toolkit?
Thank you, Lloyd. It gives me pleasure to talk about this toolkit that has been developed by CARICAD. Our toolkit really is a collection of resources for managing succession planning and succession management, if you talk about it broadly. The toolkit was developed to assist and support users in planning and implementing succession planning and management. It was crafted in such a way as to familiarize users with the terminologies and the course of procedures and processes involved in succession planning and management. It also provides instructions on how to plan for and implement succession planning in the public service. So it's very comprehensive. As a matter of fact, it contains sections like a draft succession planning policy template, because if succession plan has to be implemented, it starts with a policy.
Yes.
What is the policy? What is the mandate for going forward with that? So we have included in that a draft policy template that can be modified by member states going forward. It also includes a step-by-step processes, instructions and templates that support the processes. It also contains a competency framework and assessment tool for senior managers. We also have terms of reference for a succession planning committee, and that committee will be tasked with really supporting the Department of Public Administration with identification of high potentials in the public service. That committee, the constitution of that committee really will be a diverse group of persons, retired public officers, high-standing public officers, persons from the private sector, from legal department, from the unions. So it's really a diverse group of persons.
Bringing to that range of competencies.
Exactly. Yes, and who also can be fair and transparent in identifying high potential employees. We also have included in the toolkit frequently asked questions that will also support the communication strategy going forward by any member state.
What are the anticipated benefits?
There are so many benefits. We hope to see our member states, really embracing it and taking it forward and making it part of their leadership development programs. Some of the benefits we say it's a more transparent way of identifying future leaders. It would also help keep the public service on track with regard to key employees when they leave the service, or if they demit office, if they leave the service for greener pastures, as we said earlier. It also ensures that the public service is prepared with some sort of support plan when key people leave. And it also provides a bird's eye view of where the talent resides in the public service. So these are just a few of some of the benefits that we anticipate succession planning will have, and the toolkit can support that process going forward.
Another benefit that just came to my mind too, it actually can lend itself to better fiscal management as well. Our HR costs constitute the largest portion of our public sector budgets. When you have the right kind of data to know exactly who we need to identify, who we need to train, who we need to develop, then we are now spending our tax dollars, our training dollars in a far more
judiciously. As we said earlier, succession planning is about the right people, putting the right people in the right position, in the right place at the right time to do the right things, and all of those impact on the on our budgets and so. Because if we can recruit the right persons, it means spending less money on when you recruit a wrong person. We all know what happens.
Oh, yes.
If we can recruit the right persons, develop them, send them to the right training programs, then that in itself will reduce the cost, on public sector administration. Sorry.
The final question to you. In order for this to be implemented, we need the buy-in and support of key decision makers in Caribbean public services. What do we need to do to persuade key decision makers to implement this succession planning policy and toolkit?
We just spoke about the benefits of succession planning, to the public. I think that in itself, if you can sell that, if we can sell that to our stakeholders at every level, I think this is a start. And this is why a communication strategy is so very important to the succession planning process. But generally, I think that there is a realization across both private and public sectors in our region that if we don't invest in leadership, we are not going to be able to cope with what is ahead of us. So if we want to be more resilient, everybody's, flying this idea of resilient organization.
Oh, yes.
But if we want to be resilient, we need to be able to have train the right leaders and to prepare for that eventuality. And so we need to sell that. We need to sell it to our people in the region at every level, at the political level, whether it's at the senior management level. But there is a realization that, yes, leadership is important and we need to focus on that.
I recall 1.5 years ago, the hurricane hurricane that have impacted Dominica.
Yeah.
And the fact that thereafter the country experienced a massive reduction in population, which affected the public service, actually lost staff, and that brought into sharp focus that succession planning is an issue, even in the face, not just of people just retiring, not only in terms of migration, normal migration, but climate change can actually impact the numbers and quality of your human resources.
Precisely. And, after crises such as this, we have to recalibrate.
Yes.
And recalibrate means that we need to look at to be resilient, we need to have the right competencies in place so that when those events happen, that we're prepared to go forward. But as I said, this giant light bulb that has gone off in the Caribbean region is a moment where we are realizing that, we can no longer focus only on changing structures, but we must also focus on succession planning, on leadership. And I believe with all the leadership programs that are now being offered at every level, by every institution, I think, we are realizing that. But how do we translate that into the organization? How do we make that transition from learning to actual action in the public service? And leadership development program, succession planning is going to be very, very critical. So, governments must realize that, in order to be able to get the public service to do what it needs to do, which is to be resilient, to be customer-centric, to be able to operate within the limits of our available resources, we cannot get away from that. We must invest in leadership in the public sector. And succession planning is a key part of leadership development.
And our organization, CARICAD, is here to support Caribbean Public Services through our Caribbean Leadership Program, through our succession policy template and toolkit, and through a variety of other consultancy services that we offer to our respective member states. Mrs. Warrington, we want to thank you so very much for sharing with us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure sharing.
You've been listening to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series. Please check with this station for other episodes in our series. To learn more about the Caribbean Leadership Program, please visit our website at www.caribbeanleadership.org. Thanks for joining us.